بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين وحبيب رب العالمين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam. I ask Allah to grant us all the sincere intentions. In the previous session we had been reading the saying of Al-Qushayri in refuting anthropomorphists, people who attribute the attributes of the creation to Allah, even if they say, well, we don't believe that they are like the attributes of the creation. The matters that they attribute to Allah, like they say that He is above, so they use this word. They use the word hands, they use the word eyes. They do that, and then they say, well, not like our eyes, not like our hands, not like our face, and so on. These words that they use, they explicitly necessitate either shape, size, or, well, they all necessitate a limit. They all necessitate a limit. And therefore it is not permissible to attribute these words in English to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. As for what was revealed in the Qur'an, then yes, of course, we affirm the attribution of those words to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Like Allah revealed, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. We believe in al-istiwa as Allah revealed, without giving it modality, without giving it a manner of being. So Al-Qushayri was speaking about this. And remember, they only take the matters attributed to Allah literally. Al-Qushayri said, if someone said, in general, ta'wil is valid, except for what is in reference to Allah and His attributes, because there is no ta'wil in that. If someone was to say that when it comes to the attributes of Allah, we've got to take it literally. As for everything else, we can interpret, give it the metaphorical meaning, take it figuratively. If someone was to say this, Al-Qushayri, rahimahullah, said, this claim of his implies that what pertains to other than Allah needs to be known, and what pertains to the Creator and His attributes needs to be kept away. Because remember, another layer of this is that those people said that you've got to take it literally, but in actual fact, nobody knows what it means except Allah. So on the one hand, they're saying you've got to take it literally, so you've got to say a hand, and you've got to say above about Him. And then on the other hand, they're saying, but you know what? Only Allah knows what it really means. So then where is the literal meaning then? Where is them taking the literal meaning if they are saying, well, only Allah knows what it means? Why this push and push and push for why this shoving down the throats of people that they need to take the literal meaning, and that you can't give it a figurative meaning when you're saying that, well, we don't even know what it actually means. What's the point? So it's as though these people are saying, well, if you can't know what it means about Allah, then it's as though you're saying that it's not important to know about Allah, but you've got to know about the creation. That's why you can interpret it. The hidden reality of the issue is that those who prohibit interpretation, they say, at-ta'wilu ta'til, that not taking it literally is kufr, they say. The reality is that they believe in the actual likening of Allah to the creation. Even if they say, oh, we never said it's like our hand. We never said that Allah is above like we are above. These people actually, in their core, it logically necessitates that they believe that Allah is like us in some way. They have to. If they say Allah is above, but then they say, oh, but I don't mean in a place, that's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. It's like saying the apple was delicious, but I'm not saying I ate it. It doesn't make sense. How did you taste it otherwise? You had to lick it at least. The hidden reality of this issue is that those that prohibit this non-literal interpretation in reality believe in the actual likening of Allah to the creation. And this has been our debate with these people for centuries. Since Muhammad ibn Karram, since that student of Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who gained popularity for being ascetic, being detached from the world. And then he started to focus on these ayahs and hadiths, and he started to take them literally. And then every so often, a new charlatan would appear. Whether it was Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Kathir, Al-Dhahabi, Ibn Battah, perhaps Ad-Darimi, Ibn Abd al-Barr, and then lately Albani, Al-Fawzan, Ibn Baz, Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab. They come and they renew this school of anthropomorphism. And it's the same arguments. The arguments they make today, they've been made in the past. So the hidden reality is that they actually believe in the likening of Allah to the creation, except that they use deception to misguide people. They say Allah has a hand, but not like our hands. They say Allah has a foot, but not like our feet. They say that Allah has an istiwa of himself. They say he has an aboveness, but not like our aboveness. And they don't accept. They do not accept for you to say istawa Allah, or that Allah is fawq, with the meaning of aboveness in status. No. If you're someone who knows the Arabic language and you know the proofs and things, they won't excuse you. They'll say, if you take it non-literally, you're a kafir. This is what they don't want you to hear. They sometimes mention about the attributes of Allah, the Wahhabis. They sometimes mention about the attributes of Allah, and they say that in cases like this, that if there was an ignorant person and he didn't know, we don't call him a kafir. As for if someone knew, then we would call him a kafir for not taking the literal meaning. So they would use deceptive words. They'd say Allah has a hand, oh, but not like our hand. He has a foot, but not like our foot, not like our feet. Hence, let the one who is precise, let the one who thinks logically, with the intellect, as Allah revealed and supported and encouraged in the Qur'an, let this person say to them, this speech of yours is in need of clarification. That what you're saying, it's a hand, but it's not like our hands, but we don't even know what it means. So this speech of yours requires clarification. It is self-contradictory to say that we take the issue by the apparent meaning, we take the literal meaning, and at the same time to say we can't imagine it. This is the crux of the matter. This is what we all need to understand, and not get lost in, you don't follow the book, or you're interpreting, you're not supposed to interpret, or no, stick to this matter. The three things they say. You have to take the attributes literally. Let's take the supposed hand for an example. They say Allah has a hand. They'll say you're not allowed to interpret, and in actual fact, we don't even know what it means. So this is what they say. They say things that are contradictory. This is not the creed that Allah accepts. Inna ad-deena inda Allahi al-Islam. Allah Ta'ala The only religion that he accepted is al-Islam. This, what they are calling to, is confusing. It is not Islam. It is calling towards ignorance when Allah called towards knowledge, proof, and righteousness. So for them to say, we take the issue by the apparent meaning, and at the same time, we cannot conceive the meaning. This is contradictory. For example, let's look at the saying of Allah in Surah Al-Qalam. يَوْمَ يُكْشَفُ عَنْ سَاقٍ. Meaning, if taken literally, the day when the saq, the day when the shin will be exposed. The shin, which is between your kneecap and your ankle. The shin, where you wear your shin pads. So, يَوْمَ يُكْشَفُ, on the day that something will be uncovered. What will be uncovered? عَنْ سَاقٍ. The saq will be uncovered. This is the literal meaning of the word saq, shin. There are other meanings also. So if someone takes the literal meaning, it would be the organ, a saq, or the part of the body. That's what organ also means. It doesn't have to mean something like stomach. Organ, the part of the body that is composed of skin, muscle, bone, ligaments, and marrow. All of this is a saq. Loosely translated as shin. All of this is a saq. Fine. So if one takes by this apparent meaning, according to the rule that these people present, if one takes by the apparent meaning and adheres to it and says, yes, Allah has a saq, Allah has a shin, then they would have to confirm a body part to Allah. There are no two ways about it. And this is clear-cut kufr. And if they say, no, we don't say the shin about Allah. We don't say Allah has a shin. Al-Qushayri said, and if you are unable to take by this apparent meaning, if you refuse to take by the apparent meaning, that there is this marrow, this bone, these ligaments and flesh, if you remove yourself from that, if you say, no, we don't go by that, then where is this notion of, we take by the apparent meaning? You obviously don't. So where is this notion of, no, we stick to the apparent meaning, we have to take it literally? Well, you've just said now that you don't accept that Allah has, marrow and bone, and so you're not taking by the apparent meaning. So where is this call? Where is this advocacy of, we've got to take by the apparent meaning? You're obviously not doing that. Then how are you taking by the apparent meaning? Did you not here, in this case, abandon the apparent meaning and know that the glorified Lord was exalted from that to which the apparent meanings delude? So saq, it might delude a person into thinking Allah has a shin, but the sound mind goes against that. And you, O person who doesn't want to say that, you don't want to say that you take by the apparent meaning, so then how is it that you call to the apparent meaning when you don't believe in it? Then how would that be taking by the apparent meaning? And if the one who opposes us says that these apparent meanings are themselves in origin meaningless. Someone says that. Like remember they said, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. They said this ayah means only Allah knows their meaning. Okay, so what are you doing giving them an apparent meaning, firstly? If they say only Allah knows their meaning. If the one who opposes us says that these ayahs, their apparent meanings are themselves in origin meaningless in the language, then that is judging part of the Qur'an to be, or parts of the Qur'an to be void. Someone says that, well, we don't know what they mean really, only Allah knows. Someone might say, well, what's the point of revealing them then? What was the point of revealing them? And this is a claim that these parts of the Qur'an have no benefit in them. Well, no benefit in them being conveyed to the Prophet and hence to us. And that they are useless, and this is actually impossible. This is impossible. In the language of the Arabs, one would find as much as one desires of figurative usage, majaz. So metaphors, similes, and many other literary devices. Many. You take al-majaz al-mursal as an example. You have so many alaqat. For example, you mention one word instead of another, or rather you replace a word with another just because of the place that it's in. Or you mention one place, you replace one word with another just because of the reason for that thing to take place. You replace one word with another بِاعْتِبَارْ مَا يَكُونْ, meaning in terms of what it's going to become, and it hasn't become it yet. All these are literary devices in Arabic. There are so many different examples. So in the Arabic language, one finds as much as one desires of figurative usage, majaz, and depth of meaning in speech. And the Arabs of the past used to know the different contexts, and they understood the intended meanings. Hence, the one who departs from ta'wil, the one who doesn't use this figurative speech, doesn't apply to the Qur'an also, he does that because of his own limited understanding of the Arabic language. As for the one who encompasses the different dimensions of the Arabic language, knowing the true meanings, then for him is easy. And indeed it was revealed, Allah revealed, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. No one knows the meanings of these verses except Allah and وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, and those that are deeply rooted in the knowledge. Those that are deeply rooted in the knowledge. This is if one recites without pausing. Remember, there are two recitations. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, or وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. So there are two recitations in this regard. Those who are deeply rooted in the knowledge also know these meanings. And they say we believe in all of it as being from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And Al-Baghawi, Al-Mufassir, the famous scholar of Al-Tafsir, he said that Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma said, أَنَا مِنَ الرَّاسِخِينَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. So remember that verse says, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, that the knowledge, the well-rooted scholars, they know the meanings as well. Ibn Abbas humbly said, أَنَا مِنَ الرَّاسِخِينَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. I am among these well-rooted people in knowledge. In Surah Al-Kahf, Allah revealed that nobody except a little, illa qaleel, only a few people know the number of the people of Al-Kahf, the people in the cave. So Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma used to say, أَنَا مِنْ ذَلِكَ الْقَلِيلِ, I am among that minority who knows. So very humbly, he knew the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him, Allahumma allimhu al-hikmata wa ta'wil al-kitab. Oh Allah, grant Ibn Abbas the knowledge, grant him wisdom, and grant him the ability to interpret the verses of the Qur'an. So he used to say, I am the one who was granted this knowledge. This is the end of the quote of Al-Hafiz Al-Zabidi in reference to what he conveyed from Abu Nasr Al-Qushayri. So Al-Zabidi, remember, he had written a book which was an explanation of a book. And in that explanation of the book, that book, he cited a book by Al-Qushayri. Let's have the names of these books. What are these three books? So let's start again. Al-Zabidi had a book. No, actually, let's start the other way. Al-Ghazali had a book. Okay, its name was X. You're going to mention it, inshallah. Al-Zabidi explained book X with book Y. And in book Y, which is the explanation of book X, right? Al-Zabidi mentioned book Z by Al-Qushayri. So what is the name of the book of Al-Qushayri? No. Oh, that's his dad's. Yeah, that's his dad's. That's a different Qushayri. No. Huh? Shall I give you two letters? Begins with a ta and a thal. Alif lam, obviously. And then ta and a tha. If I give you the first word and then you don't get the second. At-tadhkirah. Al-Sharqiyya. Al-Qushayri had a book called At-Tadhkiratu Al-Sharqiyya. And this book is lost. It has been lost. The only way we know that it existed is because other scholars copied large amounts of it into their own books. So At-Tadhkiratu Al-Sharqiyya was written by Al-Qushayri, and also you have then Az-Zabidi, who explained Al-Ghazali's book. Al-Ghazali's book was called Ihya Ulumuddin. You just needed a push, didn't you? Yeah. Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the Islamic sciences. And Muhammad Murtada Az-Zabidi explained Ihya Ulumuddin. And he called it, I forgot it there for a moment, but it's back. Ithafus. Did you hear him? I heard him. Ithafus Sadat al-Muttaqeen. Where's Umar? He would have saved the day. Ithafus Sadat al-Muttaqeen. Alright? So this is important that you know this. Al-Ghazali's book, Ihya Ulumuddin, was explained by the Ash'ari and the Maturidi. Muhammad Murtada Zabidi, he named his explanation Ithafu Sadat al-Muttaqeen ala Sharhi, the explanation of Ihya Ulumuddin. In it he mentioned a large part of Al-Qushayri's book, At-Tadhkiratu Al-Sharqiyyah. Right. Now, this is important to understand about the Qur'an. There are two methods with regards to the mutashabihat verses. These verses that can have more than one meaning in the Arabic language, there are two methods with regards to their how to deal with them. And both methods are correct. The first is the method of most of the Salaf. Most, not all. And this is important for you to know, for us to know. The Salaf, who were those that lived in the first 3 centuries, these were the Salaf. And the way that they used to deal with these ayahs was that they used to interpret these mutashabihat by other than their apparent meanings, but in a general way. So all of the Salaf, right, they interpreted the mutashabihat verses. Some of them just said, we're not going to go into it. We're just going to believe in the meaning. We're just going to believe in the word that was revealed and say Allah is not like the creation. And that there is no kayf. This is very important. They said there is no kayf, no manner of being. So they'd say, Amirruha kama ja'at. Just as it was revealed, just like let it pass. Just believe that it was revealed and don't go into it. Just let it pass. Don't stop it. Don't try it. Just let it go. Okay, we believe in it. But bila kayf, very important. Bila kayf, without a kayf, without a how, without a manner of being attributed to Allah. This was the madhab of some of the Salaf. Some of the Salaf. This is by believing in them and having the creed that these attributes of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala are not bodily attributes, but rather that they have a meaning that befits the majesty of Allah and His greatness. Without specification. Instead, they referred those mutashabihat back to the verses like laysa kamithlihi shay, like verses like Allah is not like the creation. Okay? So there are some people nowadays that call themselves Atharis. Al-Athari, you might have heard Al-Athari. Al-Athari was a title that was used in the past by some scholars, like Al-Iraqi, the famous scholar of Hadith. He said in one of his verses of poetry, Abdul Rahim ibn al-Husayn al-Athari يقول راجي ربه المقتدري عبد الرحيم ibn al-Husayn al-Athari. Now, al-Athari, what it meant was, so actually, al-Athar means trace, literally. Athar. We use it in Urdu too. Like, Asar. It means trace. What is meant by it is what's mentioned in the Qur'an and what's mentioned by the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So someone who sticks to the Qur'an and the Hadiths believes in the Athar, in that which the Prophet brought to us and that which remains, like traces of it are left. Not only traces, the whole Qur'an is here, and the Hadiths, the authentic Hadiths are here. So anyone who believes in that is an Athari. So we would be Athariya. We believe in the Athar. We believe in what remains. Right? Okay, fine. Then this term was hijacked by anthropomorphists, people like the Wahhabis and others before them. They said, oh, we are Athari. Like, they like to call themselves Salafiyya, Ahlul Hadith, all the names, right? Ahlul Sunnah. They like to call themselves all these names just to give the impression, to delude the listener into thinking, oh yeah, these guys are legit. These guys are really on the truth. So they started to call themselves Atharis. Nowadays, they have this thing where they say, oh, we have the Athari Creed. We have the Athari Creed. What they mean by it is this, that they say we stick to what was revealed and we don't go left and right. We don't interpret it. But the difference between this and the real Salaf of the past is that the real Salaf of the past didn't used to attribute a how to Allah, a manner of being, like this or like that, big or small. No, these people, the Athariyah supposedly, they actually attribute modality to Allah. They attribute a how, a kayf, and a manner of being to Allah. Okay? So nowadays, if you hear somebody saying, oh, I'm an Athari, I have the Athari creed, this is just, usually this is a Wahhabi in disguise. Usually. Someone might say that, look, there were scholars in the past that were Atharis. You say, okay, what does that mean? Tell me what that means. If they say to you, okay, Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal radiyallahu anhu, he took verses of the Qur'an and he didn't interpret them. We'd say, okay, keep going. Fine, I'm listening. He didn't interpret them. And he didn't give them a manner of being. We say, okay, keep going, good. If they say, and he believed that, laysa kamithlihi shay, we say, fine. If that's the belief, then if you want to call that an Athari, fair enough. But they don't do that nowadays. They say, for example, Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was an Athari. He didn't interpret the verses. Okay. They would say, he took them as Allah mentioned them. You think, okay, that's obvious. What do you mean? Then they'll say, well, if they translate it, they'll say, well, you've got to take it literally. And then you say, then they'd say, well, Allah has a how, but we just don't know how. Now you know that the creed of the anthropomorphist has slipped in. So when they say, oh, but we follow the Athari creed. No, this is just a game. This is just a trick. This is just a trick. If you can find a person who says, I am an Athari, who believes what was revealed, and he doesn't interpret, he does like the Salaf do. He says, I don't want to go into it. I just believe in the word. I believe in the word istawa in Arabic. I believe in the word fawq in Arabic. and he doesn't translate it, and he doesn't believe a how about Allah. He doesn't say, oh, Allah is fawq, and then does this. Or he doesn't say Allah is above and then does this. No. If a person does not attribute these physical attributes to Allah and says, I am an athari, fair enough. He'd be like us. He'd be from Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. He'd be like some of the Salaf that said, no, we're not going to interpret this verse. By the way, Imam Ahmad wasn't like that. Imam Ahmad said about verses like Ja'a Rabbuka, he said it doesn't mean that Allah comes, like something moves. He said, إِنَّمَا جَاءَتْ قُدْرَتُهُ, that the signs of the power of Allah come. He interpreted basically, right? So beware of the so-called athari creed. It's like a new thing. It's like a new trend. Like, oh, we're athari. We're with the sunnah. We're with the hadith. We're with the Qur'an. We're with the athar. Yeah, right. It's a joke, subhanallah. So don't be fooled. If you hear the word athari, then if they attribute a how to Allah, then this is not permissible. This is not permissible. So beware of these people that say, we are atharis. In actual fact, who is an athari? Who sticks with the athar? The Muslims. Who are Ahlul Hadith, the people of Hadith? The Muslims, Ahlul Sunnah. Who are really, who are Salafis? Ahlul Sunnah, the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, they are Salafiyya because they follow the Salaf. As for the people today who call themselves Salafiyya, no, they don't follow the Salaf. They don't follow the creed of the Salaf. They say you have to take literally all the verses that are attributed, or things they have in them that are attributed to Allah. But the Salaf, not all of them did that. Not all of the Salaf did that like we're seeing now. So one way is that the Salaf, if they were brought a verse like this, that can have many different meanings in the language attributed to Allah, they would just say, look, we're not going to go into it. We're not going to go into it. Allah doesn't have a how. Huwa laysa kamithlihi shay. He's not like the creation, and we're not going to go into it. That's what some of them did. Al-Shafi'i radiyallahu anhu said, آمنت بما جاء عن الله على مراد الله وبما جاء عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على مراد رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. He said, I believe in what Allah sent according to the meaning that Allah willed. So Allah knows what it means. And what came from the messenger also, I believe in it according to what the messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam intended by it. Furthermore, denying that the Salaf engaged in detailed interpretation. This, like some people have claimed, is rejected. So nowadays, many people will say to you, the Wahhabis, they will say, no, there's no such thing as ta'wil tafsili. Ta'wil tafsili. Some of them now stay quiet about it because they've been exposed and refuted so much. But in the past more, they used to say, you've got to take it literally, you've got to take it literally, you've got to take it literally. But then all it takes is for someone to show them that the real Salaf, those of the first 300 years, actually interpreted these verses in detail. They gave them a non-literal meaning in detail. And they didn't just say, some of them didn't just say, we're not going to go into it. They went into it and they gave literal meanings. Like, for example, Al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari was among the Salaf. Al-Bukhari, he said that the saying of Allah, كُلُّ شَيْءٍ هَالِكٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهُ, he gave it a detailed, non-literal interpretation. If someone was to take this verse literally, they would say it means everything will be destroyed except the face of Allah. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. But Al-Bukhari, look what he did. Al-Bukhari, he wrote this verse in his Sahih, in Sahih Al-Bukhari, in the book of Tafsir, okay, in a chapter of Tafsir. He said, كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه, أي إلا ملكه. إلا وجهه, he said, means إلا ملكه. And then he gave a second interpretation and he said, ويقال, and it is also said, ما يتقرب به إليه. So he gave two interpretations. What are they? He said that everything will perish except the mulk of Allah, the ownership of Allah, which is the attribute of Allah. He said everything will perish except the wajh of Allah. He didn't say it means face. He said something completely different. Where is the face and where is dominion? He said, إِلَّا وَجْهَهُ إِلَّا مُلْكَهُ. It doesn't even have the same letters. Yeah, etymologically, if you look at the roots of words, wajh is in one valley and mulk is in another valley. So according to this, if they are true, the Wahhabis, to this principle that they have, Al-Bukhari is kafir. Why the double standards? According to this principle, Al-Bukhari is kafir because he very clearly gave a non-literal interpretation. Al-Bukhari is of understanding. So if they apply the rule, Al-Bukhari will be in hell forever without an end because he was a non-Muslim, because he gave a non-literal interpretation. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Al-Bukhari يعني Imam al-A'imma, he is among the Imams of the Imams. And the scholars even debated about whether he was a mujtahid or not. In his book, if you study his book, he left indications of him being a mujtahid in his book. So he said, everything will perish except his wajh, except the wajh of Allah, i.e. the mulk of Allah, i.e. the dominion, the ownership of Allah, the attribute of Allah, which is that He owns. And he also gave a second interpretation, which according to the Wahhabiyya, this would be a second kufr. So not only did he say mulk, he said, وَيُقَال, and it is said, مَا يُتَقَرَّبُ بِهِ إِلَيْهِ. That another valid interpretation, a valid non-literal interpretation is, and this is actually the statement of Sufyan al-Thawri, another mujtahid. He said this verse means مَا يُتَقَرَّبُ بِهِ إِلَيْهِ. So according to them, according to the principle, Bukhari, kafir. Sufyan al-Thawri, kafir. Who else? We'll see. So, مَا يُتَقَرَّبُ بِهِ إِلَيْهِ means that anything that is done to seek a higher status. مَا يُتَقَرَّبُ بِهِ, anything that is done to, figuratively speaking, get closer to Allah. Yani in status. So, as for mulk, absolute ownership and rulership of Allah, it is an eternal attribute of Allah. It is not like the rulership that He gives to His creatures. And elsewhere in Sahih al-Bukhari, there is also ta'wil, non-literal interpretation. So these people are asked if they follow the Wahhabis. If they follow the Wahhabis, they are to be asked, look, Al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari made ta'wil in all these places in his book. So according to your rule, he is a kafir. When Al-Bukhari was accepted by the Salaf, he was accepted by the Salaf and he's been accepted by all of the scholars of the Khalaf. And suddenly, you come and you say Bukhari is kafir? وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So, these are questions that they need to answer. These are questions that, if they are posed to them, they won't answer. Why won't they answer? They don't answer, even though they say about some of the big scholars of Ahl Sunnah, they say, oh, he was a mushrik. He was a Sufi. And they use this term Sufi to mean something derogatory. It's not. They say, oh, he was a mushrik, he was a Sufi, he used to do this. They wouldn't leave anybody among the scholars of Ahl Sunnah except calling them a kafir. The only people who they would rely upon is Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyyah, Ibn al-Kathir, al-Dhahabi, and a few others. That's it. That is the supposed Islamic nation for them. So elsewhere in Sahih al-Bukhari, there is also ta'wil, non-literal interpretation. Namely, Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani mentioned that Al-Khattabi said that Al-Bukhari performed a ta'wil. He did a ta'wil for al-Dahik. So he narrated the hadith of al-Dahik, where the Prophet ﷺ said about those two people who were hospitable to the Prophet's guest, and they pretended that they were eating and the guest ate. So the Prophet said, ضحك الله الليلة. Al-Bukhari said, ضحك الله الليلة means Allah had mercy. رحم الله الليلة. ضحك literally means to laugh. So Al-Bukhari said that the Prophet said ضحك, what it means is rahima. So according to them then, according to the rule of the Wahhabis, again Al-Bukhari has committed kufr, ta'til. So on 3 counts now, at least they would have to call him a kafir. Al-Bukhari, Imamul A'imma. Sometimes they do this. Just the other day, one of them said to me, he said, I can't remember what, it was about bid'ah. And I said, Shafi'i said that bid'ah is of 2 types. And Nawawi said that bid'ah is of 2 types. Ibn Abidin said bid'ah is many types. Al-Izz ibn Abd salam said al-bid'ah is of many types. And he said, well, who is a Shafi'i when the Prophet said otherwise? He said, who is a Shafi'i when the Prophet said otherwise? You say to such a person, you say, really, like, don't you know that a Shafi'i knew that one hadith which you've memorized possibly? Don't you think that he knew this one hadith as well as probably a million other hadiths, and then came to this judgment, and then you speak of a Shafi'i as though he is nothing? So they'll have this brazen-faced stance where they'll say, well, such and such person was just a man. The audacity. Shameful. It's shameful. Shameful. They have no respect for the scholars of Al-Islam. None. There's a whole other topic of taqleed that a lot of them don't believe in. They don't believe in the madhabs. Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, Hanafi. They don't believe in it. They say, we go by the Qur'an and the Sunnah. We don't take our knowledge from men. We don't take our knowledge from these men. We go straight to the Qur'an. We go straight to the Sunnah. Somebody once commented on a video that I did, and he said something like this. So someone else replied, and they said to him, genius, where do you think a Shafi'i got it from? Where do you think Abu Hanifa got it from? Genius. Of course, the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So this is why you find them saying, oh, but where's your proof? Where's the proof for this? Where's the proof for that? As though like if I say something or you say something, according to some of the scholars, as though we got it out of our pocket. As though it was our opinion. So that's a whole other topic about how they don't believe. How a lot of them don't believe in the madhabs. They just say, give us the Qur'an and give us the hadith. They say, the hadith is available now, translated in English. So they just look for the number of the hadith and they say, oh yeah, look at that. Oh, that's... So that according to them is knowledge. According to them, that is knowledge. So anyway, according to their rule then, according to the rule that they mentioned that at-ta'wil is ta'til, that interpreting is kufr, they would have to call Al-Bukhari a kafir on 3 counts, at least 3 counts. Likewise, Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal radiyallahu anhu, who was also among the Salaf, who they so, let's say, so determinedly cling to, it's confirmed that when explaining the ayah of the Qur'an, وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا. وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ, if taken literally, would mean Allah came from place to place, came. Al-Imam Ahmad said, وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ إِنَّمَا, rather, جَاءَتْ قُدْرَتُهُ أي جاءت آثار قدرته, that the signs of his power will appear, the great signs of his power will appear on the day of judgment. Yes, the signs of the power of Allah are all around us, but great, great, great signs of the power of Allah will appear on the day of judgment. So according to this rule of theirs, that at-ta'wil, ta'til, why didn't Imam Ahmad just say, oh, ja'a rabbuka, okay, our Lord will come, and leave it at that? Because Imam Ahmad knew that the literal meaning, al-maji', to attribute, movement or coming to Allah, to attribute that to Allah, it's impermissible and it's impossible that Allah would be in a place, or that he would commute from one place to another. It's impossible. That's why he said, إِنَّمَا جَاءَتْ قُدْرَتُهُ. The signs of the power of Allah will come, we will see them. I created matters, we will see. So according to the rule that those people had given, Imam Ahmad would have to be charged with kufr. So far who's that? Al-Bukhari, Al-Thawri, Mujtahids. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, also a Mujtahid. That would be, these three people are kuffar up to now. We can keep going. This was narrated by Al-Hafiz Al-Bayhaqi. Al-Hafiz Al-Bayhaqi, who was praised by many scholars. I'm not going to read that. He was praised by many scholars. There are a great number of scholars who mention in their written works that Al-Imam Ahmad explained some verses of the Qur'an and so on with other than their apparent meanings. Among them is Al-Hafiz Abdul Rahman ibn al-Jawzi, who is regarded as one of the heads of the Hanbali school due to his great knowledge. Okay, so that is one school of thought amongst Ahl Sunnah. One school of thought amongst Ahl Sunnah is At-Ta'wil Al-Ijmali. Okay? General, non-literal interpretation. Why general? Because those scholars said, we're not going to go into it. Allah revealed istawa. Yeah, we're not going to translate it into other languages or anything. Istawa, istawa. Does it mean sit? No, of course not. Does it mean well cooked? No, of course not. Does it mean to be at the same level? Of course not. Does it mean to stand up when the back is straight? Istawa? Of course not. Does it mean above? Of course not. They said, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. Allah is not like the creation. We'll believe in the word and we don't need to go into it. Why do we need to go into it? This is the test for the people, they said. That some people, يَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ. Some people delve into the meanings of these types of verses and they come out with saying things like, oh, Allah is above, but not like we're above, but we don't know what it means. Or Allah has a hand, but not like our hand. You know what? We don't know what it means. That's called, that madhab, that school of thought is valid to say that we're not going to go into it. We're going to say He's not like the creation. We're not going to attribute a how to Allah and we're just going to leave it. You could do that right now. You could say istawa. Yeah, I don't know what istawa means. But I tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean Allah is above. And I tell you also that it doesn't mean Allah has a how. So you might sit here right now and say, you know what, all the verses that are like this, I'm going to say Allah knows best what they mean. They have a meaning, but Allah knows best what they mean. Okay? And there is a benefit for Allah having revealed them also. Not that, they were just mentioned and only Allah knows what they mean. No. So that's one school. Another school is At-Ta'wil At-Tafsili. Actually delving into the meanings of these verses and giving an actual, specific, non-literal meaning. Like to say istawa. Istawa means qahara. Istawa means istawla. Istawa means saytara. To say the word istawa, it means to control. It's a different. Istawla means qahara. Or Abqa, to preserve. Or it means istawla, to subjugate. This is what some scholars did. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? You all know the answer. Why did they give a specific non-literal meaning? What started to happen?
People got weaker in the language.
People got weaker in the language. Yeah, good. Why?
Because Islam started spreading to other countries where people are less familiar with Arabic.
Yeah, exactly. Islam started to spread into countries where people were not speaking, they weren't speaking in Arabic. They're speaking their own languages. So the Muslim scholars of those times felt that we need to explain these verses, because people might try to translate them into their own languages and then they would end up understanding something wrong. So this is why they gave specific meanings. Yani istawa means such and such. It means to control, to an X, Y, and Z. So the Salaf did this, as we've just seen. So there's two ways. What about us? What do? We can go either way. What can we do? We can go either way. Okay? But what is, from one aspect, better for us now is to give people specific meanings that the scholars gave. Why? So that we don't leave a person to their own devices. We say, oh no, this means such and such. Because there might be somebody who right now is not prepared to listen to the explanation, the thorough explanation of these two schools. So you say to them, yeah, this word means this. It doesn't mean that literally. It doesn't mean that. That's why, and this, what I'm going to say now, is not limiting people from learning, but it's actually encouraging people to learn. Okay, this is why, in general, it's not good for us to give a person a so-called translation of the Qur'an and just let them read it. What is better, because they might stumble upon one of these verses and take it literally and believe in it and think, oh yeah, okay, God has a face, or God has eyes, or God has, in the non-metaphorical sense. They might say that. So how is this statement of mine, for example, encouraging people to learn? The way that we should learn is by learning every verse of the Qur'an, from the Qur'an, through a teacher. So we learn how to recite it, how to articulate it properly, and then also we learn its meaning from a trustworthy and reliable teacher who heard it from that trustworthy and reliable teacher all the way back to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Like this, they would know the meanings of the verses. And they would know, oh, this means this over there, it doesn't mean that. Someone might say, okay, why are these verses in the Qur'an in the first place? Verses that might confuse people. How is that? Well, Allah told us, يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا. Allah told us, by reading the Qur'an, some people will become misguided. By reading this holy, sacred, blessed book, some people will become misguided. Allah told us. And وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا. Allah revealed that many will read it and become misguided, and many will read it and become guided. Right? So some might say, well, but still, why are these verses in there that might confuse people? Well, Allah revealed that this is a test. This is a test from Allah for us to see. Allah encouraged the use of the intellect in the Qur'an on numerous occasions. They just make sense, right? So then we would see people who would say, no, you can't use the intellect, you can't use your mind, you think, huh? What a great trial this is, what a test this is for these people. They've gone completely off the tracks. They've said you can't even use your mind, whilst using the Qur'an as a base, obviously, and the Hadith as a base. So, and we'll finish with this last part here. The second method with regards to the mutashabihat verses is the method of the majority of the Khalaf, that is, those people that came after the first 3 centuries. So now we're in 1443, so 300 and what's after that. They interpreted some religious texts in a detailed way by specifying their meanings in accordance with the language of the Arabs, and like the Salaf, they did not take the literal apparent meaning. So what do both schools of thought have in common? You can't take the literal meaning. You don't give it the literal meaning. This is something mutual between the two schools of thought of Ahlus Sunnah. There is no harm in taking by this method also, by specifically attributing a non-literal interpretation. Why? Especially if done to protect the Muslims from falling into likening Allah to the creation. When in the case of being fearful for the creed of the Muslims being lost. An example of this method of the Khalaf is what Allah revealed in reprimanding Iblis, the devil. Allah revealed in Surah Sad, Ayah 75. ما منعك أن تسجد لما خلقت بيدي. What prevented you from prostrating to what Allah created? Allah revealed what I created with my yadain. If taken literally, it means two hands. Obviously, we don't say Allah has a hand or two or three. We don't say Allah has a hand. So, you can say about yadain that it means that Allah gave in the creation, gave Adam alayhi salam great importance, great status. Oh Iblis, what prevented, yani the devil, what prevented you from prostrating when Allah ordered? What prevented you from prostrating to this creation, Adam, which Allah created and gave a great status to? This is what yadain can mean figuratively in the Arabic language. In English, we can't really do that. For example, if someone bakes a cake, if they bake you a cake, just for the sake of Allah, it's Jumu'ah, they want to bake you a cake. So they bake you a cake, and then you're angry, so the cake comes and you slap it against the wall. In English, you can't say, that person wouldn't be able to say, oh, why did you not, accept this that I that I made with my own two hands? You can't take it figuratively to mean, actually you could. That I made with my own two hands. The hands aren't really important. What they mean is I put so much love and care, hopefully not sweat and blood, into the actual cake. But in Arabic, this specifically, it exists. يعني بيدي. That I did this with care. I gave it great importance. And there are scholars that said this. For example, Fakhruddin al-Razi, he said that al-yadain means shiddatul inayati wal ikhtisas. Having given it, the matter, the creation of Adam, great importance. At the bottom you can see that. Shiddatul inayah wal ikhtisas. Likewise, Abu Hilal al-Askari said in one of his books that al-yad, which some people might take to mean hand, right? He said al-yad al-hifdhu wal-kala' or kala'ah. It means protection. Protection. So next time, inshallah, we're going to go through some verses which Allah Ta'ala revealed that the scholars of the Khalaf interpreted, gave non-literal interpretations and said the most important thing is don't give Allah a manner of being. What is a manner of being? Being like this or that, being above or below, being blue or black, being big or small, hot or cold, rough or smooth. This is a manner of being. This is modality, and modality is negated from Allah. We negate that Allah has modality. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala does not have a how, just as He does not have a where, because He's without place, just as He does not have a when, because He's not bound by time. He is the creator of when, the creator of how, and the creator of where. So we'll go through some of these verses next week, insha'Allah ta'ala. Is anybody that has a question? I have one final question then, or maybe three. Muhammad Murtada Zabidi's book is called what? I can't hear at the back because that's on, so. It's not. No. What's Al-Ghazali's book called? That's Ihya Ulumuddin. Muhammad Murtada Zabidi's book is called? We'll pass it over. Hmm? What did you say? No, that's not his book either. That's Al-Qushayri's book. Yeah, Muhammad Murtada Zabidi's book is Ithaf Sadat al-Muttaqeen. Come on. How many years has it been? Too many. Thought it would have grown on us by now. Huh?
Even when you said it, if you said, okay, repeat it, what is going to be?
You need to have a night for about 20 minutes where you just sit and write them down. Yeah? Inshallah, that's tonight. Alright, let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.